Oh, excuse me. The heat makes me so tired.
Huh?
The heat makes me so tired.
Especially if you were out watering.
I know, I was just out watering some of our trees for about an hour, but it was enough just to wake me out.
first.
Close to meeting what I think is in that ordinance.
Hey, boss.
Landscape, so I think we may be able to push them on landscape.
How are you?
Hi, Deborah Edmondson, so nice to meet you.
Mark is
Thank
our
you.
P and Z chairman.
Oh, okay, great.
Here,
Bad traffic.
there you go.
I don't know where these people are coming from.
Did you change it that we shared?
No, no, you can use that.
1171,
We'll share this one.
going up 114.
Okay, everyone, it's 6:15. I'm going to call to order a special town council meeting here for Copper Canyon. And the issue we're going to talk about today in this special council meeting is discussing council's procedures and policies. But first, let's start with public input. Is there anybody that would wish us to talk for public input for 3 minutes on our subject today of the workshop, or any other subject that we should talk about? Okay, nobody is discussing anything, so that's excellent. We'll go to the discussion item. No action will be taken except for giving direction to the town administrator and town attorney regarding future agenda items. So we've asked or I've requested our attorney, Deborah, to brief us again on procedures for town council meetings so I can interface better and we can all interface better in the town meetings and things. And I'll hand it over to Deborah.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think that, you know, having enjoyed my first meeting here with the council, I think one of the things that I felt like I wanted to talk to you all about is the importance of how you make motions. And motions are not casual things. They are things that whatever you're voting for and however you say it, that's the law, that's the rule, that's what it is. And there were, you know, last week, some of the things that were on the agenda were, I would say, not quite as what I'll call critical as some other things that would come up. So ideally, what I would say, and I've seen this done in more than one city, not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but ideally, you should have one person making the motion. And that's done mostly because then that person gets very good at it, and then whoever wants to second it. Now, it doesn't matter so much on things like saying, you know, I make a motion that we appoint Joe Smith to P&Z. It doesn't matter quite so much on that. But it does matter when you have developments come through, okay? And here's the thing, when you make a motion to approve a development, all right, you're going to have the, probably the rezoning, possibly a development plan, although I understand those may have gone away, but I think there's ways to get around that. And then, you know, the preliminary plat. Well, first of all, you know, understand the preliminary plat is what we call ministerial. And what that means is there's a certain set of criteria that the developer has to meet, okay? And when he's reviewing that set of criteria, and it's both from a statutory point of view and also what Copper Canyon has, and being a general law city, you're not going to have much more than what the statutory requirements are. But if the developer meets those requirements, I don't care if you have 100 people stand up in the room and oppose it. You have to pass it. You have to pass it, okay? Now, there's different circumstances under which you can not pass it, which is if he, and I say he, but it's he or she, does not meet that criteria. If it's not, you know, say there's 10. If he doesn't meet 9, it cannot be approved. And by the way, plats are considered approved if you don't take action on them within 30 days after they're submitted to the town. So, but on some of these other issues, and, you know, when you pass the zoning, you know, and also, you know, zoning has always been considered to be discretionary, okay? So, hey, I don't like your shirt, I'm not gonna vote to rezone. Now, that has changed in I guess recently, or not, a number of years ago, in that you have a master plan, okay? You have a land use plan. If the zoning follows the land use plan, all right, you really should be approving it, okay? If you approve a plan, or you want to approve a plan that, you know, and I have not learned all your zoning categories yet, so I'll just say I'm making something up. So if you have SF1A, that's from Southwick, that's 1 acre. And if it's SF 30,000 and a developer comes in with SF 30,000 and he wants to put it in an area that's land use planned low density, for instance, and of course that's a little different, but let's say your ordinance defines low density, and again, these are all important issues, how your zoning categories are defined. All right, and so then what you need to do is the council then, if they're gonna approve his plan based on the fact of changing, basically saying, okay, this is more dense than we have on our land use plan, then you need to go in and make a change to your land use plan, which you can do, okay? Now, if a developer comes in with a site plan and, you know, there's all different things going on, it is extremely critical that when the motion is made, you know, I'm going to assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's some kind of staff development, their staff report. Okay, and that report is going to list out everything that's in that development, and including things that maybe are not in line with your ordinance, okay? And usually the report will say, okay, you know, this is, developers asking for these variances, okay? You do not have to grant variances to your subdivision, or to your ordinances, okay, your development ordinances, okay? If a developer asks for a variance, that's all it is a request, okay? And regardless of how many millions of dollars he's going to bring to this community, all right, you don't have to approve it if, you know, it's not something that in your good conscience you don't want to approve, okay? Now, but if you decide to approve it, whoever makes the motion, and this is why I think it's good practice to kind of identify someone who's going to make the motion, and the person going to say, you know, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ZA 25-047 site plan for ABC subdivision, subject to the following, okay? And then we're going to say, you know, subject to the staff review report, okay? And, you know, now if you're granting the variances, then also approving, you know, I don't know, whatever, you know, that goats will be allowed on the property, okay? Or, you know, or subject to the staff development report, but if you're not going to grant the variance, then you don't need to say you're not granting the variance, okay? And so the language that is used is critically important, because if everything isn't covered in the motion, that, you know, whether it's his variances, you know, on the site plan, you want to dot every I and cross every T, because then, and I know you'll be shocked to hear this, what developers will then come back and do, they will say, oh, we don't have to do that, that wasn't in the motion, all right? And I've lived that, frankly, in South Lake on an IHOP that I didn't want to be blue, all right? So, so it has to be, if you're granting variances, it has to be in the motion, and you have to make sure, and if you're asking the developer to do something extra, that he or she says, yes, sure, I will, you know, whatever, I'm happy to not make that IHOP blue, then that needs to be in the motion, subject to the developer's agreement that, you know, the IHOP's going to be in all neutral colors or something like that. Because even if he says it from the podium, he's not under oath, okay? And so whatever is passed in the motion is what's going to be approved, and it's what's going, you know, the developer is gonna live or die on, and it gives the town teeth. And without getting into details, I've been reviewing something this week on behalf of the town that I think there were some steps missed, okay? And it makes a difference. So, you know, I think, again, when you make the motion, you want to say, Mr. Mayor, I'm trying to see what we've got going on here. Trying to find something. And I think, you know, the important one is, you know, when I make a motion that, you know, we approve ordinance number 25.006, repealing Chapter 10 subdivision regulation and Chapter 10A subdivision ordinance in its entirety and replacing it with a new Chapter 10 subdivision ordinance that we have reviewed this evening, or something like that. And then you will call for a vote, you know, then there'll be a second, okay? And then, you know, right now, it seems, after one meeting, it seems like you're all pretty aligned, all right? But, you know, you're not always going to be 100% aligned. So there'll be someone periodically who, you know, will not want to vote for something. So now the other thing is if you have something controversial and, you know, and the mayor cuts off discussion and he says, okay, you know, we've talked long enough about this, I'll take a vote, and someone who wants fill in the blank to pass says, you know, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve development number, you know, the Gates Farm development, subject to the staff review report of, you know, dated blah, blah, blah. And the rest of you are thinking, heck to the no on that. And there's no second, the motion dies, all right? And then it would be up to the mayor to say, okay, well, you know, he can either ask for more discussion, or he can say, you know, do I have a motion to deny the Gates, whatever, okay? And then you take the vote. And so that's pretty much, you know, how that gets handled.
Can I ask you a couple of questions, Deborah? So we do have a review process when any plat comes in, with major plat, and we have a checklist, and it doesn't get to the town council for a vote or an approval unless that checklist is complete.
Correct.
So we do have that.
Yeah, and then the engineer will do his report, he'll make recommendations, and sometimes on that recommendation letter, it will say, you know, you may want to consider to approve with these following conditions.
Right.
It may be an agreement, it may be a downstream, it may be, you know, whatever the case may be. So there may, sometimes he'll put conditions on there as well.
So it's not up to the town council members to be looking for a review or give me checklist items and make sure it's all complete. That's done by our staff and by our engineer, you know, and that kind of thing. So, and our lawyer.
Jeff?
Yes, sir.
May I?
Yes.
One thing that I found helpful in other situations past is to have the resolutions written out in advance. To have them drafted by staff so that you're not kind of making it up as you go along. Sometimes if it's something that's like, yeah, we're probably gonna approve this probably, it can actually be in the agenda. Here's the following resolution. So you can do that as well. And one other thing that I think would help is, and this hasn't always worked in prior councils, is you're supposed to have a motion before you have a discussion in general. So someone makes the motion, someone seconds it, and then you open it for discussion. We've kind of done it, guys, we've had discussion, and then we do a motion, and then we call for a vote. So sometimes it works better to have the motion and the second, and then open the floor to the discussion, and then go for
Well,
call for vote.
I found it a little cumbersome last time
I-
for me personally, trying to decide, you know, let's open discussion, let's open a motion to vote, and then,
well, let me say this.
That's the best way to handle it.
And I'm not sure exactly to what you're referring, but I would just say, and you and I've had the discussion about Robert's Rules of Order, and if that's part of it, so be it. But, you know, in my view, until kind of you've had the discussion, I'm not really sure how there can be a motion. And, you know, until either you realize the direction council's going, especially with the developer, you've had opportunities to ask he or she questions that you want to know. You've had the opportunity to try to push the envelope a little bit, you know, because, and that's another thing, I mean, I know I've pushed a few envelopes in my time on council, okay? And, you know, I mean, the worst thing they can say is no, right? Or no, that's something I can't do because financially, you know, whatever they say. But I mean, it always, you know, it doesn't hurt to ask. And, you know, insofar, I do think, you know, I assume if you're passing a resolution, the resolution, I'm assuming, is going to be in your packet. And I do think it's a good idea to take some, you know, language from that. But at least the resolution relating to the appointment of, or whatever, you know, whatever it is, the contract
Sure.
for stormwater management, you know. So, so I think that those are my comments, unless y'all have some questions.
I have a question. I understand what you're saying about having one person predominantly make the motion, and I agree with that. We were talking earlier when we were doing a financial thing this morning about if someone gets hit by a bus, kind of, I hope no one does. That's a horrible thought. Please forgive me for bringing that up. Is it prudent to have a secondary person who is versed in being able to make that motion, that is also practiced in the event that they are not in council for whatever reason, so that we have two people for whatever as a backup to be able to do
Oh,
that?
sure, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And it's been my experience, there's people who are more interested in making the actual motion than others, okay? So, you know, it just kind of, if someone's interested in doing that, absolutely.
I like Mark's idea about having it written out.
Yeah.
I mean, the action items that we have, write it in a way that it can easily be turned into a motion.
Sure.
That's usually how I write it.
Yeah, yeah. So, and literally then all we do is just read, we can just read that, right? And just make sure it's captured. Unless there's, to your point, there's some negotiating that is going on.
Right.
With the developer up there.
Right.
We want to get what he says included.
Well,
in the
and then what should be happening, and this is why you kind of have one or two people designated, that person, you'll see that person writing, because they're taking notes on, you know, what is the developer agreeing to, okay? And so, you know, and everyone obviously can do that. But yeah, and again, and that's also the advantage of kind of having an unofficially designated person who does that, because then that person knows, hey, I've got to get these points down, okay?
So, a question, so you don't see a potential for any kind of threats of outside discussion or whatever, we have one person doing the thing every single time, you know, where the town would say, hey, you guys pre-discussed this evidently, because let's just use Victoria, for example. She's doing every single motion every single time, and that doesn't, you don't see that to be a threat to Open Meetings Act
Well,
issues or anything like that?
You know,
I just want to make sure we're not there.
I can just, all I can say is, you know, I've never heard any kind of concern about that in any
Okay.
way. I mean, it's a strange new world, but, you know, I don't see that. I mean, how could that be a violation of the Open Meetings Act if a person is sitting there taking notes and people are agreeing to it? I mean, you know, or the developer is agreeing to it as he or she is standing up there, okay?
Well, I would say also if there's no second, doesn't that automatically say that there's not a pre-consensus, right? Because we wouldn't bring up a motion if we knew that no one was going to second it, so. I would,
Okay, well, I just want to make sure there's no problem with that being one person just saying the motions all the time.
Yeah.
So my question would be, what if that is set, and we know that the motion's gonna be made, but during the discussion, someone says, no, I don't feel comfortable with this. We know that Victoria's gonna make the motion, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not feeling comfortable with this. I'm gonna make a motion that we table it, or something to that effect that hasn't been planned. How would that work? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's something that, you definitely would have to, ask the developer about, or whoever is standing up there, but obviously, if you think you have, it's one of those things that it's like a preliminary plat that's not on a pass it, or it's passed anyway. I think it's something, if you desire to do that, you could do that. I mean, inevitably, most councils even, I've been on happy, all for one for all councils, and I've been on more contentious council, or P and Z. Because of course I served 2 terms on P and Z, and I think, most of the time, people know where things are going. Not every now and again you'll get a surprise, but 9 times out of 10, if you think it should be tabled, and, now, what I wouldn't do is just pop a motion in there without saying, Mr. Mayor, I really have some concerns about this. I think this is, kind of not ready for prime time. And, and I'll give you an example of one very controversial development that just actually ultimately got denied in South Lake, where, of course, trees are very important to us in South Lake. And so it was a heavily treed tract. And I don't know how this, well, yes, I do. He had the ex-mayor come up and intervene, but, for whatever reason, they didn't do a tree survey, okay? And so, they came forward, and basically, the council was upset there was no tree survey. They really didn't have answers. And so, after a discussion, the council tabled it, all right? But what I'm saying is, it would be very rare for a person to just pop up if the discussion is going a certain way and say, I make a motion, we table this development. It's probably not going to, I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm not saying you can't do that, but I think it would kind of be like a, what? Huh?
I think you're right about the conversation would be heading in that direction. I just want to make sure that.
Right.
that somebody had that option to do that if that's the case.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't be a contentious type situation.
Well, I can't guarantee.
Huh? Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah, never know.
There's always discussion before a motion,
that's what
right?
I'm
So
saying.
that's
but
when you
That's what I'm
voice
saying,
that.
that
Right.
would lead you to go, oh gosh, exactly what you said. I'm not feeling comfortable. with
Am I
what
wrong?
Rules of order town.
Well, I was gonna say that.
For that, if there's a motion on the table, you can't even throw another motion up until you.
I think,
Or you can
Yeah.
ask the person who's made the motion to modify it, but you can't just throw another one in the middle.
Right.
It's a general rule, it's.
To vote on the motion first before you put another motion up.
Right, or ask the person with the motion to modify it.
Yeah.
Deborah, am I wrong to say that, I'm feeling like you're trying to put this in a way of just making decorum, and to make sure that it's correct, and to make sure that it's following an order that makes us have correct optics, to make sure that we're legal, and to make sure that we look.
Well, and also to make sure that what you end up passing is what you intended to pass,
So
okay?
that we're not getting sued, and, is that correct?
Well, let's just say, so things, you thought you passed this, but the wording wasn't right, and then obviously, I'm here to keep you from getting sued, but what I think about is and again, this is less important if you're appointing someone to P and Z or something like that, but when I'm talking more about developments, you want to make sure you've got your I's dotted and T's crossed and everything you want in the motion, because the developer then, he's going to come back and he's going to say, well, yeah, I know we talked about me not cutting down that grove of trees, but that wasn't in the motion. okay?
But like to her point, I think that no one doesn't want to not respect you. Like you still have your say in amongst someone that might be making the motion, that if you are speaking out and having that conversation, that everyone is still going to hear you. And that if at the last moment you really feel like you're not being heard, Robert's rules still applies, that if you feel like it needs to be tabled, or you have a point of discussion or a point of order that something's happening out there, that there's a disruption, that you can still say that. Is that correct? That's really what applies,
Yes.
right? That's what,
I just
You
would,
were-
I've heard that several times, just want to make sure that that wouldn't be something that would be inappropriate. Not that I ever plan to do that, I don't know, but I'm
Like-
just saying we're having a discussion and then we need more information than what we got in our packet, and we might just say, hey, I'd like to make a motion. And the person that's in charge of making the motion can also do that, correct?
Yeah, now, when you said you've heard that several times, what were you
I've
referring?
heard that councils over the last 20 years table a motion.
Oh, yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
absolutely.
And so when you're saying that we're gonna make a motion, I just wanna make sure that that's,
But I think the tabling occurs before the motion for a vote occurs.
Yes.
That's what's important on that. Once a
Yes.
motion for a vote occurs, you gotta withdraw that motion, or, you gotta finish it up.
yeah, obviously, it would be, we're
You'd have
heading
to-
in
you'd
that
have to-
direction.
yes.
And then a person in the council isn't comfortable with the direction, or doesn't understand, or has some questions about it, then then we can table it until the next time, until we can get more feedback. I mean, I've
Yeah,
seen that.
assuming you have the votes to table it.
Yeah, and I don't plan on that, I just wanna make sure that's
Yeah.
an option.
Sure, absolutely.
Deborah, could you please explain the difference between postponing and tabling? And is there a difference in your viewpoint? Because I've heard that over the years. Sometimes they say, oh, you have to postpone it. No, you have to table it. So when do those words have to?
Well, here's my view on that, okay? Postponing it means it's taken off the agenda, okay? Tabling it means it's on the agenda, okay? And you had a discussion, and the council decided not to make a decision on it, so it got tabled until, I don't know, the next meeting or 2 meetings down the road or something like that. If something gets postponed, now, I suppose a council could decide not to vote. No, I think you have to table it if it's on the agenda. Something that gets postponed is pulled from the agenda, okay? And with agreement, all right? Okay, so, and even then, sometimes if it's already on the agenda, you have to table it. You just put it on your consent agenda to table. Okay, if you decide, let's say the developer gets sick or something, okay, and it's on the agenda, then, what you do is, and the developer says, I'm sick, I can't make the meeting, whatever, and it's already on the agenda, and the agenda's already posted, then, to me, the prudent thing to do would be to add tabling that to the consent agenda. There's no reason to discuss it, okay?
So just for me, for flowing there's no reason to have a motion to open discussion, is there? I could just, we have it on the
Well,
agenda items, I
again-
could open discussion and then close discussion when everybody's all had their things that, said. Or what's the best way?
I mean, I don't think you need a motion. Now,
What if it's not on the agenda?
well, no, he's talking about.
Agenda items.
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
I'm-
agenda items, I think you can say, no, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna close the discussion. Sometimes you're gonna wanna reopen discussion.
Sure.
Okay? And, that's your purview as the mayor,
Yeah.
okay? So,
Okay,
You don't need a motion.
I don't need a motion to open discussion.
I'll put it to you like this, all right? I have not, I've been on 2 different city councils, served 2 terms on planning and zoning, been around other cities. I've not seen any city strictly observe Robert's rules, okay? And I don't know, Robert's rules may say that, I don't know, and I will own that I don't know that, okay? But what I have seen is that, the mayor says, okay, usually it's the staff report, this is the order I've seen. The staff report If there's a developer, he or she comes up, does their thing. If there's a public hearing, the public hearing is opened. Mayor closes the public hearing, opens discussion amongst the council. Sometimes the council wants the developer to come forward and, answer some questions. And then after that, you say, okay, well, does anybody have anything else they want to add or any other questions? No, okay, well then I'm going to close the discussion and I'll accept a vote, I'll entertain a vote.
Yes. So as a general philosophy for what I'd like to do for us is I would like to take the agenda items that we have listed here that we've all had input in to put onto the agenda, right? I'll go down the order of it. It can be rearranged if we need to, like we did the last meeting. That's not a problem. We'll announce that it's being reordered for convenience for people and stuff. And then we'll open, so my thought is, correct me if I'm wrong, this will solve it. I'll open a discussion on that agenda item, whatever it is, right? Close the discussion and then look for a motion for a vote.
I mean, generally, yes. I mean,
That's
that,
keeping it simple. If we need to go more detailed than that, we can do that.
and again, there's different things that will happen. I mean, I've seen cases where people from the audience going, "Ah, da, 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 da," and the mayor will say, okay, we're going to briefly reopen the public hearing, because clearly, because then you have to say, you cannot address me from the,
That's correct.
right. So, I mean, these things happen, it just, because democracy's messy. And at least right now, we still have one. So, anyway.
Well, that solves my three questions that I had.
I have one question about the consent agenda, because somebody gave me advice this week. If you have an issue with an item on the consent agenda, correct? Like last week, I had questions on the budget. That needs to be removed, correct? And then that's taken out of the consent agenda. You approved the current consent agenda. So basically, we did it sort of wrong last week, or I did, whatever. And then that separate item gets addressed, is that correct?
Yeah.
At the next meeting.
You can,
No. You can do consent agenda, anybody pull anything off.
Then you can pull anything out.
right,
And then the next item on the agenda should be discuss the items that go on the consent
right,
agenda.
right.
You can do it right after.
Okay.
No, that's,
Okay.
he's
Does that
correct,
require
he's
a vote?
correct, yeah.
Does that require
No,
a vote to
no,
pull
it-
it off the consent agenda?
No, it doesn't.
So the mayor can just do that.
Yeah, if someone has a question about it, yeah.
Okay, because actually, Mark was talking to me about that, and I just want to make sure that, it's rare that happens, but we had 8 or 9 consent agenda items last time, and I had a question on one, so I want to make sure, so, thank you.
What about adding an action item that's not on the agenda, and voting on it?
No.
It's taboo, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah. Even in an emergency situation?
no.
There is instead of the 3 business days for emergency meetings, you can have an emergency meeting with short notice to cover emergency situations, right?
Yes.
What is that? Is that 2 days? I forget.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I don't remember, but there is a reduced limit for notification
Three still.
for an emergency meeting.
I mean, I think it is 3 days.
It's still
3 business days,
still 3
so,
business days?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I don't have any more questions. Deborah, you got anything else we need to talk about?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
Just to
Chase.
clarify on there, I get the point of making sure whoever's making the motion spells out any variances, but as far as if it's printed here, can we read it in brief, or does it need to be letter for letter?
Well, I think, yeah, as long as as long as it's printed and, and I guess what I'm talking more about too is, developments, and there's a staff report, you're going to say, subject to the staff report dated, blah, blah, January 5th, 2025. And then if it's something like a resolution, I think it's very easy, to just say, okay, I make a motion that, I know I'm looking at what you've got here, that, there's not much on the agenda tonight, but that, like I said, what I read regarding the subdivision ordinance, okay? So you don't have to get any fancier than that. It just needs to cover the point, cover the salient points that need to be made in the motion, so.
When you were talking about staff report, what do we call? I mean, because Troy's staff report.
So the engineer report from Chris, so that'll accompany the application, the checklist. So usually there's a checklist, there's that report, there's they paid their taxes, they proof of ownership, all those documents that support a preliminary plat. So when she's talking about a report, it's Chris's report,
Okay, that's
along
what
with the checklist.
I was confusing that with your report.
No,
which-
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, two different deals when it comes to development.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything else? Anything else from the public input or anything on our discussion? Okay, well, as of 6:50, I'll close the special town council workshop meeting. Do we need a vote to do that? Okay, well, that's it. So we'll wait for the meetings to open up at 7 o'clock.